Hello, wonderful people, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever moment of this wonderful day you are enjoying on your time zones. I was so looking forward to resuming the Hacking HR live conversations. It's been too long. So it makes me so happy and so humbled and grateful to be able to say welcome to a Hacking HR panel, part of our September series. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your host today. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. We have, as usually, Jessa backstage. She is our tech and logistics whisperer. So please do give her a round of applause. And Jessa, please, let's fill up the screen with the wonderful people that we will be spending the next hour with. It's so good to start the series with friendly faces. And in true Enrique fashion, I see that he still goes strong with long panel titles. So just please allow me 2 seconds to make sure that I read it. So we will be discussing about the people first business oriented culture, the ins and outs of an organizational culture that delivers for the people and the business. Otherwise, no pressure, but we do have one very short hour to delve in this. Welcome to everybody taking the time and the energy and the curiosity to be with us today or watching the recording later on our hackinghrlab.io platform. Please do use the chat and the comments as your own conversational space. And we will be keeping a lens on your chats and happy to bring in the highlights into our conversations. So, super excited to kick off the conversation today with the very easy introductory round of short conversation. So what I will do, I hope I remember the drill. I will pass the e-mic around as you appear on my screen clockwise. And a very easy first question. Please firstly shortly introduce yourselves and then do let us know what exactly about this topic is so meaningful to you personally that it prompted you to be here today. So without further ado, Anuj, so good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Minola. Same here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my co-panelists as well as people who have joined in from whichever part of the world you are here. My name is Anuj Kathuria. I'm based in Mumbai, India. After having spent 21 years in the human resource function at multiple leadership levels, I kickstarted my own startup, which is in the business of HR consulting, organization culture, and HR digitization. Manola, what drew me to this topic is I'm very passionate about it and believe very strongly in it. For the simple reason, I have failed numerous times and innumerable defeats I have had in trying to change an organizational culture. And only after many failures did I understand what are the core tenets, which are the strings I need to pull. And it is not just a one shoe fit all blanket or one shoe fit all kind of a situation. You have to look at elements from multiple different areas. You have to look at multiple different people. You have to look future forward. And many layers are there that one needs to touch upon. And only then are you able to move the needle. So, would be happy to learn from my co-panelists and share some of my failures and finally some successes I had in that. Looking forward to this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Anuj. So good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here. My name is Sue Sands, and I am an HR director for one of the major home health care companies in the United States. This is passionate to me because I have been in multiple positions with very bad culture. And when people talk about culture, they think engagement, and engagement is totally separate from culture. Culture is basically the foundation of the company and why people want to be there. So that's why it's very passionate to me in my role and trying to make a company successful through good culture.
Thank you so much. Tracy, a pleasure as always.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Manola. I'm thrilled to be back here. And my name is Tracy Spanenberg. I'm the Chief People Officer for the Granite Group, and we're a wholesale distributor based in the Northeast of the U.S. And I'm coming from Concord, New Hampshire, where I live and where we're headquartered as well. And I was really excited to join this particular panel because we talk a lot about people first, and we talk a lot about the business. And we talk, maybe they're separate things, but in the best of companies, people first companies are business oriented, and business oriented companies are people first, and they don't exist in separate worlds. In the best of companies, they coexist together. And so I'm really excited to explore that and to learn from my fellow panelists.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jana. So good to have you here on this lineup.
Yes, good to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Gianna Kirkpatrick. I'm the Director of People Ops at Verdad Real Estate. We're based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And this topic sparked my interest because I like to describe myself as a people champion in everything I say and do in work life and personal life as well. But I think it's like Tracy said, it's a beautiful blend. It has to coexist together. So I'm excited to just dive in and talk about this topic.
This is so wonderful. And before we dive into talking about people first or business-oriented cultures, something that fascinates me is that regardless of how many panels we have on culture, we still hear about new lenses and new meanings and new ways in which people resonate with culture or expectations they have from culture. So before we dive into any kind of culture, I would invite you to try and demystify a little bit. What do we mean by culture? And especially, I would like to dismantle this. Oh, we have a ping pong table. We have a good culture. So let's invite Sue to lead us into this round of answers, and then everybody else, the drill. The live unmuting competition is officially open. So Sue, please lead us into this.
All right, great. Can you hear me okay?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome, great. So when you mentioned ping pong tables, that's engagement. That's how you make employees happy. That's how the pizza parties and the dinners and the team games and stuff like that. That's engagement. That's not culture. It is part of culture, but that's not how you define your company culture. So culture it's the foundation for how employees work with one another, interact with one another, how they get their work done. And people assume that having a company culture is always a good thing. There's bad cultures out there. There's really bad cultures out there. Places where you don't feel comfortable and safe expressing your opinions and working with other teams to help solve problems. And I think you have to have that. You have to have that safety. You have to have that ability to make mistakes, and also the expectation to be accountable for those mistakes and learn from your mistakes.
I just want to remind you, because it's been a while, going last on any other round than the first round is very difficult. So let's see. Tracy, I saw you unmuting yourself.
I won't go first, but I don't necessarily want to be last. And I love what Sue said. And I think, culture, it's one of those things where you ask, what is culture? And it's so hard to define for so many people, but it's essentially shared values, behaviors, standards, and it's what, people think, say, and do together in a group, right? And so that's super broad. At the Granite Group, we talk about our overall culture, and then we have little cultures within our 60 different locations. But I want to get to the ping pong table thing, because I've talked about this a lot over the years, and I'm old enough to remember when those were first put in place. And they weren't originally put in place to engage people. They were put in place to keep people in the building. And they were put in place so that you wouldn't leave. So the things like the free food, the ping pong tables, the foosball, they're all fun. And that's great. But if you go to a company and you actually watch people doing it, it's rare to see them actually using it, especially right now because most people are probably remote in those kinds of companies. So, what we talk about, what we think about, and when we think about our culture and we think about our most engaged people, it's not that. Is their work meaningful? Is their supervisor supportive? Do they feel like they really have an impact in the business? And that goes for every single person in the organization, no matter what their position is. Do they have an impact in the business? And if we're doing it right, we want people to see that and feel that.
Jana.
Very well said. Very well said, Tracy. Sorry, Jana, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, very well said, Tracy. And I'll piggyback on that. Culture, exactly. It's the shared values and beliefs of the organization. I'll even go a bit further to say it's the bloodline. If you have healthy blood or not healthy blood as well. But the ping pong table thing, that's what I thought a few years ago when I started my career. That's what I thought culture was. I walked into a building and I was like, oh, that's so cool. They have a ping pong table. I get to, go play ping pong with my coworkers, and they happen to be playing ping pong at the time. But really, further along in the interview process, I realized, no, that's not what makes the culture. It's how we care for one another. If we can talk to leadership without feeling super scared, and just that transparency within leadership, within, your manager or coworker, and not being afraid to rely on someone if something else is going on. Those are all things that make up a culture, and also truly abiding by the core values of the company as well. For example, my company's name is Verdad, which means truth in Spanish. And we're trying to be transparent with, our development process with our clients, but also within one another. It's been a challenging time in the real estate industry, but we've been transparent, and that's what's kept our culture alive through all of it.
Okay. Well, I'll try to simplify this in what I have observed over last 2 decades plus. We are 5 people on this call, 5 very distinct, very unique individuals, and we have very unique DNAs. Culture is exactly like that to me. If an organization is an entity, culture is the fabric of this entity. Culture is nothing but the DNA of that organization. Now, that DNA comes alive in form of what we call as ways of working, which run past from the time somebody is a prospective candidate till the time somebody becomes an alum of the organization, number one, which is then circumferenced by, whether it's policy, technology, process, across the realm of whatever we do. It's not about what we do, it's about how we do what we do. To me, that is culture. Whether it is people inside the organization or people outside the organization, it's one thread that binds all these beats together, and that's, to me, the DNA of the organization. Thank you.
Well, what a wonderful build-up to go into discussing what exactly is this people-first, business-oriented culture. And I would invite you to go a little bit deeper into what does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And well, Tracy and Jana, I will blame this on you because you gave me an idea of a bit of a spin to the next question, because you went into the history of seeing culture transforming. I am particularly curious about, is there anything meaningful and significant about people first and business oriented culture that came through navigating the past 2-3 years and moving forward? And well, Jana, I would ask you to be the pioneer for this round of answers.
Sure thing. Really, I'll give you an example. Back at it was still during COVID time, but in Texas specifically, we had ice storms happening. And so we had power going out, and people like literally didn't have water, didn't have a place to go. And we were doing virtual events. We're busy on Slack talking, but our culture extended beyond just those different things, and we opened our homes to other employees. It's kind of tricky with that sometimes, but that was an extension of being people first. Our leadership noticed, hey, these people are hurting right now, let's make sure we're lending a helping hand. Maybe it's buying them a hotel room for a few days so that they're able to do their work and take a shower or whatever it may be, and just feel safe and feel warm. So really being a people first oriented culture, it's caring about employees' well-being. And it goes into engagement, goes into their growth and development within their organization on their journeys. But at the core of it, it's caring about their well-being and making sure that their mental health, their physical health, those were physical needs that people were going through at that time, that they're taking care of. And yeah, that's an example from me.
Thank you. Tracy.
I think really things changed forever. So many things changed forever over the past few years. And we're largely an in-person business. So we were largely always dispersed. So I think we had a bit of a leg up in figuring out the culture. But, almost overnight, companies were forced to send people home. And I think most companies had always thought of culture as something you need to be in one place and see what everybody's doing, and hence the ping pong tables and the food and all of that. And so companies that were set up that way were forced to really redefine, what does that look like? What does culture look like when I can't see someone? I can't just walk over to their desk. And that actually, and I know a lot of companies have now reversed that, and that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But that reflection was a good thing, because culture isn't just being physically present. There's an emotional component to it. There's just, a psychological safety component to it. So many things. Our culture shifted in a way that we took a much more personal approach than we ever had, and we didn't let go of that. So we divided up our regions with our people team, and we made random calls, because our people were physically going into work every day, making random calls. How are you doing? How's your family? Anything we can do? We pivoted to sending out toilet paper when we needed to. We did things that were so far beyond what a people team would normally do, because that's what our people needed us to do in that crazy moment. So I think it was a good point to reflect on the culture. I think that changed. I hope it doesn't change back.
So I saw you unmuted, please.
Yeah, so I 100% agree. Just think about, people first, and it was about people. Like, how can we still, be successful as a company with all of our employees remote or all over the country? And I think it really forced companies to look at, the well-being of their employees and how their employees interact remotely versus, going over to somebody's desk and talking to them. So I think that really created a shift in the importance of culture. Culture's been around for, the word culture's been around for years and years, but I think just, having to look at, okay, how can employees still work together in this new environment that we have? And I think focusing on culture, has proven that, business can be successful if they have a good culture. If people can feel like they can still work together and accomplish goals. I know for our company, we doubled in size during COVID. and most everybody was remote, and that was a huge success because we, the business proved that we have a good culture. People feel personally invested in what we do, what we stand for, that they wanted the company to be successful, and that's just part of our culture, is that, treating people right and doing the right thing. And Gianna, I remember when Texas went through that ice storm, I put up one of our Texas employees in a hotel for 2 nights. So yeah, it really is about taking care of the people and doing the right thing for people, and they will do the same thing for the company and help the business be successful.
Well, I like to sum it up by saying that the last 2, 3 years have taught us a lot of things. Things which are novel in the morning become obsolete by the evening. Uh, we are living in a world which is filled with disruption and uncertainty. Things which were never there 2, 3 years back, today they are the norm. And that's going to be there in the next 2, 3 years as well. And this cycle will continue. The key question is, does your culture take care of all these things? Whether it's new disruptive business models, whether it is changes to the very construct of what we call as work, whether hybrid or remote, whether it is for permanent employees or fixed term employees, or for that matter of fact, blue collar workers, third party employees. Is that thread which binds all these together, is it same? Or where does the thread break? Where does it get loose? I think in many organizations, depending upon the level of maturity the country has, that respective industry has, and that entity has, things have gone awry, or things have taken a very different tangential shoot where all these things have been kept into the advance of it. At the end of it, it all boils down to 2 key components. To me, the culture is what I observe and what I feel. Not everything is viewable. Some things are felt. I can be a part of an organization, but I still don't feel that I belong. Is there that component of belongingness? I can have a shard of garlic being put into an orange. It'll fit, but it doesn't belong, unfortunately. So, do you have that? I think that's the fundamental question to ask when we look at the cultural standpoint. And does it account for the unknown, or will it break once a tsunami comes? I think that's the key question that one needs to look at whenever you are, or we are looking at creating or talking about changing organizational cultures. Will our ways of working suddenly change? Which part will go weak? And will the experience change? It's not that I'm going to keep the experience phenomenal for my end customers, but not for my internal customers. Then you have broken the law. You've broken the foundations. At the end of it, if culture is the DNA of the organization, your values, your belief system, your thought process, I think that becomes the first layer. And if that is strong and that can withstand any particular attack or any particular disruption, I think you've done a phenomenal job of it.
Anuj, I must confess that I love when you go last, because you sum the conversation up, you bring new points, and then you create the perfect springboard for the next part of the chat. So I don't know, I kind of have mixed feelings of asking you to go first anytime soon.
Thank you, Minola.
It really warms my heart to see that there are so many side conversations going on in the chat, and I picked up on at least a couple of points. So I would like to bring one of them into our conversation. So there was a little bit of energy around, is culture created? Is culture co-created? Is culture directed? Is it, allowed to just evolve naturally? And I know that this is an ongoing debate, like, do we make it? Do we break it? How much nature and nurture do we allow in our company culture? And Tracy, I know you don't like to go first, but I hope it's only for the first round.
Yeah, no. This is thank you. This is probably the toughest question. And I think it is. The answer, one of my favorite HR answers is it depends, right? It depends on the company. It really does depend. I think in the best companies, it's fostered and allowed to grow and then kind of redirected and reevaluated and kind of with some input from let me be clear, HR doesn't own culture. Everybody owns culture. But as I think Sue said earlier, culture can be good. It can be bad. And we want to make sure that we're keeping a pulse on where things are. But, you're setting it like a lot of things from the top. And that's going to dictate what your CEO and what your executive team does and says and who they are and how they interact with employees and how they do business. That's all going to help set the tone for the culture at large. And then it's going to kind of be shaped by the people. At least that's my thought on that.
So
I totally agree with that. I mean, culture is a living, breathing thing that you have to nurture. It's not something you can create overnight. You can't just say, hey, here's our new culture. Tomorrow, you're all going to comply with it. You can't do that. It's something that is built from the company's values, the mission, the vision of the company, and it has to have meaning. And it has to be, like Tracy said, it has to be supported from the top. It has to be shown from the top, top down. If your top leaders don't talk to people right, if they don't interact with people right, if they don't care about the employees, the culture is just going to be something that you're constantly struggling to improve. And it's, you're not going to get the support that you need to do it. So you have to, I think you have to work every day to work on your culture. You have to work on it, because if you hire employees and they come in with their own version of culture, it may not be a culture that your company supports, and you want to be able to bring them in and say, hey, here's our culture. This is how we interact with people, and show them what the culture is.
Yeah, Sue, that's spot on. You definitely have to kind of show new hires the way. And that was something I was really proud of at my previous organization. We had a strong interview process that showed, individuals, this is how we, care for each other. This is how we're going to collaborate. And when it came to the onboarding experience, that was continued through like showing the history, but also, I would encourage other employees from various different departments and other teams to reach out, just say hello, let them know who you are and, what you do at the organization. But, there are definitely challenging times. We saw that with COVID. I've seen that at my current organization. We're primarily in person, and we've closed down our office while we're opening another one. We have to almost learn all over again how to interact remotely. And it goes beyond just, sending a quick message like, hi, hello, how are you doing? But, I did something like, okay, let's, send first day of school pictures, because that's fun. And we're wanting to know what's, going on in your lives. But culture, it definitely goes beyond just events and different things or company swag and different things that we put on for our employees. It's truly caring about well-being and collaborating, but there are things that are going to attack your culture, like market interest rates right now is killing commercial real estate in general, and we're trying to keep spirits alive. And it's a difficult time, but letting employees know where we stand and being as transparent as possible and keeping that alive and caring for people, even as they're offboarding, that has gone a tremendous way. And just trying to keep everything alive and as well as possible, even though it's going to take time to rebuild, trust in the marketplace in general.
Well, I tend to both agree and disagree with certain thoughts. I'll tell you what I mean by that. See, for me, culture, you're right, it's a living organism. It is generative. And the very fundamental quality of being generative as that is like a mind map. You cannot delete what already exists. You can only build on top of that. Now, cultures can be created, like Tracy said, depends which stage you are in. If you are a newly found startup, you have the opportunity to create the culture that you want to. However, if you are part of a large conglomerate which has been there for decades or years and years, changes do happen. And what I have seen, organizations who do not adapt, our DNA has adapted. We have adapted from Homo sapiens to Neanderthals to what we are today. And I'm sure after a couple of centuries, there'll be a different version of what we call as a human being today. And it's the same about culture. Now, if I have 20 different people or 2,000 different people who are joining my organization from someplace else, I make it a point to ensure that they have a voice in the system. If there are certain things which can be done in a better manner that will impact both my ways of working and the way we do business, I would 100% encourage that. Now, it's not a mandate that you have to act on, if you have 300,000 people in the organization, you have to act on every single thing because most of them would be already part and parcel, which people perhaps haven't observed or will observe in future, or things which are already plans in motion. But things which are not there, which can really help my organization go to the next level in terms of maturity, I would always, always welcome that. And, you know, the history of organizations has shown us there are organizations who did not adapt to changing times. Where are they right now? You can't even find their names. They are just a piece of paper with the Ministry of Commerce there. Defunct organizations. And one of the fundamental reasons for that is the same. We do not adapt. If a DNA will not adapt, it will not be able to safeguard itself against future attacks. So you have to adapt. It is generative. It will change. COVID taught us a lot of things, which I think Jana and Sue spoke about. We adapted in our organizations, right? There were many things which were done in the organization which were never there. So we did adapt. We did borrow things from each other, from times like these, where we learn different things. Some shamelessly cut, copy, pasted. Some we try to, imbue into our own context. But cultures change. They would obviously change. A Minola of 2 years back and a Minola of today is going to be very different. Her thought process, the way she looks at things, because you are a living organism, you are adapting and learning. You are generative. And that's the simple thing about cultures. Yes, Tracy was right. Some go towards the bad part and some go towards the good part. Depends on what you are trying to imbue and implement at part of it. And it can't be done overnight. It's a lengthy process. There are millions of neurons that you need to touch upon to have one synapse being created. So yeah.
Thank you. And this brought us a few minutes into the second part of our conversation. And I will just take a few seconds and welcome everybody who joined a little bit later. And if you feel that you missed on first gems of wisdom, don't worry, you can go back and watch the recording. And those of you who need to jump off before we end the conversation, the recording will be there for you as well. The other thing that I wanted to bring from the chat into our conversation is around leaders. There was a comment, I hope my memory serves me right, how culture is a leader's legacy or a leader's aspiration for their legacy. There were a few comments around how cultures are leader-led and leader role modeled. So I would really like to take a few moments and discuss how can cultures grow and evolve beyond individual leaders. And maybe a particular example is, how can a company's culture grow beyond a founder that steps down? But how is this generative organism outliving and evolving beyond its probably key creators? And I will just leave the e-mic there. And Anush, please feel free to grab it if you want to go first for once. But wherever inspiration strikes, we will take it from there. Let's see.
I think what you've asked, Minola, is $1 billion question. And I really wonder if there was a one-line answer to that or a medicine for that. So you are right. In most organizations, it's the leader's legacy. What they see in the mirror is what typically happens. Now, the key question here is, how do we define leaders? It's not always everybody who's at the CXO level, right? If I am an entry-level person, I would perhaps never have a conversation, maybe in 6 months, 7 months, or maybe a year. What I observe, what I feel, what I do is in the subset of my team, my manager, my manager's manager, my HR business partner, or whatever my relationships are. So anybody and anybody who can impact what I observe, what I feel, and what I do, to me is a culture catalyst in the organization. And it is not only about, yes, you only have the top leaders who create a culture. Yes, there are many things which flow down depending on the delegation of authority or whatever systems of governance one company has. The fundamental here is to ensure that it is sustained beyond what we call the leaders. Is what you need is, and I have figured out after multiple failures, like I said, is you need to have a robust system of ways of working. If you do not have that, I'm sorry, you are just trying to, wink at somebody in dark. Only you know what you're doing, the other person doesn't know. And these ways of working emanate from what your core belief, your core thought process is. And it just doesn't stop there. That is something which becomes the foundation for whatever your leadership model, your behavior model, your performance management, or any touch point. If there are 300 touch points from the time somebody is a prospective candidate till the time somebody is an alum, all those touch points converge or kind of shoot away from that ways of working itself. Unless you are able to articulate in a very crystal clear manner that, how are you going to bring a shift in mindsets, belief, behaviors, which again come back from the ways of working. These are those behaviors which typically create the emotional connection to who we are, what we are doing, and how we are doing. At the end of it, what matters are two things. What did we deliver and how did we deliver? Now, what part is 99.9999% defined in terms of what the leaders want? The other part, how do we deliver? What do you deliver? I think that's the most important thing. When these ways of working from which you can have your leadership model or your employee value proposition or other areas, this becomes a Bible or a guide to help people specifically understand in how we differentiate ourselves and what we pride in ourselves. And if you have that etched or imbued in every one of those touch points, I think what you have is a generative organization which will live longer than the leaders. Definitely, it will evolve and it will not just be a leash in the hand of few people.
Thank you. That's a lot of inspiration and encouragement, and making a lot of people looking forward. Tracy, I saw you unmuting yourself.
Yeah, and as always, I always learn a lot from Anuj. I appreciate that take, and I think that's a great take. And I think something you touched on, Minola, with the founder change, I think that gets into something that we haven't discussed much. We've talked about creating cultures and fostering cultures, but culture change. Sometimes when there is a change in leadership, that necessitates a change in culture. Sometimes you may want to keep it, but I've been in situations before where that culture definitely needed to change. And that's a years long process. And I think before we get into like, let's keep the culture going, we have to take a step back and assess, well, do we want to keep this culture going? What hand? And what I mentioned earlier, like you kind of always reassess. You always have to kind of come back to, does that culture need to change? Because it could be something that, is detrimental to the company as a whole, particularly in the case of an acquisition. If that culture integration isn't done really well, that could be really detrimental to the people in the current organization, the people in the organization coming in. So that's a really, again, we probably don't have time for it today, but that's a really tricky area of culture too.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, just because a founder of a company has left, does that mean you want to keep that culture? Is that the right culture to move the company forward? Maybe they have a legacy, but I think the legacy the legacy will still be there. But how you move that company forward to keep that legacy of that founder or that founding leader going is dependent on the culture, and you have to constantly look and relook at the culture to make sure it fits as your company changes. And if that means leaders leaving, you look at the culture again. And you have to continuously do that with changes in leaderships, like Tracy said. But you can still carry that legacy forward, the founder's legacy forward, without having the same culture that the founder had. So, you can still, it goes back to the basic values of the company and why the company was founded and what their main purpose was and what that means to people. You can carry that forward with a good culture and a changing culture, evolving culture.
Yeah, what everyone has said is spot on. I'm going to go back to a comment that I knew you had made about, culture being the DNA of the organization. But, DNA can sometimes, I don't know if it can totally change, but it can definitely grow, and we, have to be adaptable. In one of my past organizations, it was actually a technology startup. So when I joined, it was less than 25 people. And by the time I left, it was around 110 people. So a very, very different, company, from like a small Dallas office to now opening another 2 other offices and having employees remotely across the United States. And we had to adapt. And it wasn't just based on, being in that physical office space in Dallas or, going out. We couldn't all go out to lunch, one day together as a team because way too many people to do that now. And we definitely had to evolve and change. And that it came from our founder, from just clear and consistent communication on what our values were, but also how we treated one another when we were working on a project team. We had hired a partner throughout that time because we were looking to just hire somebody, go. We're expanding on new business. We need new business. And, we had to come back and realize that was a bad hire for our team because they, created an environment where people felt scared. They were belittled and talked down to, and we had to course correct and, offboard that partner and, start by like just that foundation again. This is our values. This is how we treat one another. And this is where we want to be, moving forward. It's just continuously trying to communicate that and making sure it's not just communicated, but we follow through on that as well.
Well, it's really hard to believe we're about 15 minutes away from saying goodbye, and that will be very, very painful because this conversation is absolutely amazing. So let's try to address 2 questions that are connected to each other, just to manage the answers. The first question is, we've given people so much food for thought, but how about we make it a little bit practical? What are some signals that an organization needs to do culture work? And I'm very aware of the fact that culture work can mean so many things for so many organizations. But what are some signals from an organization that, hey, there's a deeper problem here that we need to address above and beyond the first problems that we come across every day? And Sue, I would really love to ask you to go first on this one.
Sure, not a problem. So one of the signals, I think one of the biggest signals is, do people feel safe at work? Do they feel safe expressing their opinions and bringing up new ideas and pushing the status quo? If they don't, that's a signal for, we need to look at our culture and change that culture, because that's not the culture that's going to reduce turnover. It's not going to increase engagement. It's just not going to keep people where they're at. And you have to have that safe environment first and foremost for employees to be able to express their ideas and opinions and, just be listened to and just be treated like human beings.
Wonderful. Tracy.
I think Sue said it well. I think, and turnover is something you can look at, and particularly, a change in turnover. And like anything, when you're trying to pay attention to something, a change. So a change in behavior. If you see, a lot of toxicity and toxic behavior in the workplace, I think you certainly always should pay attention to that. But that is absolutely deadly for a culture, particularly when it's a leader. And this happens more often than we like to think, right? And, but I think what you really, really, really need to do is listen. Listen to your people, see what they're telling you. Observe whether you can do that physically or whether you can do that through, other methods, but observe what's going on. And, are people engaged? Are people, gossiping about each other? So those are some of the things you can do. And I think one of the biggest red flags and one of the biggest opportunities is communication. Inconsistent communication, right? Communication is a problem for our organization. It's a problem for every organization. It's one of these things that we're never going to solve. But if you don't have some sort of system for regular communication, that can have really detrimental impacts on your culture.
That's very true. Communication is definitely key, Tracy. And I've been at an organization before where I was scared to even walk by or my CEO's door. I would try to avoid it and go the long way around, and that's not a spot. And I was in HR, and I'm like, oh man, if I'm feeling like this, how are our employees feeling? So one practical thing I did was I kept reading about these stay interviews and these good questions to ask employees on just how they're feeling. So I was like, I'm gonna do that and just see what the feedback is out there. And after just conducting a few of those, and some of that came up, some people didn't care. They'll talk to our founder any day. But I was just wanting to implement their feedback, and I came back, had to make a detailed highlighted list of what their feedback was, and here are some ways that we can move forward. A lot of people are wanting more training and development, or they're being quote unquote forced to come into the office. Maybe we're offering free lunches and just different things so employees feel valued and heard, and maybe not every single thing that they talked about is implemented, but they know that they were at least heard and some feedback was implemented in some way, shape, or form.
So I would like to divide these signals into two different categories, the objective ones and the subjective ones. The objective ones are based on data. Now, Like Tracy said, high turnover, definitely. Number two, many organizations run employee engagement surveys. Many organizations do a culture survey. These are very good data points. Some organizations I've worked with or consulted, we went and even looked at how many people from our organization in the leadership cadre, or the ones who really make an impact, are really active on job boards. How many of my CVs are really in the market? That tells you a lot. And active, passive is one thing, active is something different. What's my organization feedback on Glassdoor, Ambition Box, multiple different sites? So there could be 30 or 40 different data points which are more objective, which tell you, okay, this is what there could be a problem. Now, these are all HR, and we've been speaking about an organization culture that looks at both people and business. What about business matrix? Are there frequent turfs in your EBITDA? Are there frequent shutdowns if there are unions? Are there frequent absenteeisms? Are there frequent complaints from your customers, whether it's a call center or shared service center, or defect ratio going up in your manufacturing if you're there? In the retail sector, suddenly your sales stops. There are turfs in your sale without any rhyme or reason. So you need to marry both people and business matrix. Whether it is your customer market share, revenue market share, your EBITDA, everything has to be married together. You're not just looking at one side of the coin. You have to look at both the sides. Now, these are the objective ones. The subjective ones, just one line. The quality of water cooler conversations, which is bitchings and gossips, tells you what is the culture of this organization. Just go and stand there for half an hour daily, and you will understand. You will know whether I have to do something or I can just, shut my eyes, go back to my workstation, start working. So you have to marry both.
I think we could have so many quality insights into a company's culture if we could see the side chat conversations during Zoom calls or team meetings. And I personally am quite happy that those are private spaces for now, at least. I did promise a second part of the bigger question, and we are very few minutes before we say goodbye. So I would invite you to make this very value dense. So 1 minute, 1.5 minutes thereabouts for each of you. Now, I'm sure that people in our audience went, oh, I kind of picked up on that signal and that one as well and that one as well. And then the question comes, where do I start? So if we can give people a very first practical anchor, and I would invite you to make this almost not necessarily HR driven. So how can anyone listening to this conversation can do something about a culture that does become meaningful and does become people first, business oriented? And what I will do in the interest of time, I will pass the e-mic around counterclockwise from how we started. That means that Gianna, you will go first, and then I will just pass it over.
Sure thing. I think number one, anyone at really any level is just leading by example. And it's that golden rule, treat others how they want to be treated. So if you want to be treated well, making sure that you're caring for your, coworkers on your team and project. If you have less on your plate, maybe, seeing someone else that's struggling and saying, hey, I can actually help you out with that project there. Or if they ask you to help them out with that project, it's approaching it with a good attitude and saying, yeah, I have this on my plate right now. I can help you, let's set up a meeting tomorrow at this time. And it's just those little kind of practical things, but, communication is key there, and just having a helping hand. And like I said, treating others how they want to be treated, leading by example.
That's wonderful. Tracy.
I think that's great. And I think I'll add, I think any sort of movement like this, I guess I don't know how culture change or culture assessment, whatever, is happens one conversation at a time. So something anybody can do is have a one-on-one conversation. Hey, I overheard you saying this, and this. What's going on with that? And just having that conversation, listening, and then, maybe figuring out what's going on, because you might find out, well, there's a problem. I'm going to go talk to my boss. Or you might find out, well, this person's really unhappy and it's nothing to do with the culture. But I think too often we either ignore, or we run to HR, or we, don't bother having one-on-one human conversations with people. And I think that's something everyone can do.
Thank you. Sue.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Leading by example and just listening, making sure we hear the people. One really practical way that we can, if your organization size supports it, get people together from different departments, different areas, different geographical locations, different cultures, different levels of the organization. Try to, keep it fairly small, but give them an opportunity to voice how their work groups or their departments or, their different sections of the organization, how are they feeling? How are they seeing things? And then work together to figure out what needs to be done. Is it problems with leadership? Maybe we need leadership coaching or leadership training. Is it a problem with, communication? Are they not feeling like they're getting enough communication from the top down? What are the issues that they're seeing, and then really focus on those, and let these people be your voice and your feelers, and give them the power to go out and make suggestions and hear people and ask questions and get their feedback and then actually do something about it.
Thank you. Anuj, bring us home.
I think I loved what Sue said. I was about to say that. With a little difference, formulate a cross functional, diverse team which doesn't have any leaders from the CXO level, only one representative. People from all walks of life, every layer needs to be there. That team needs to do an as is analysis of where we are, what is good. If things are good, no need to fix what's not broken. If things are bad, how bad they are, where are they bad? Is it a one time, or it's a multiple, it's a generic problem? Where are those things? Use principles of design thinking to do affinity mapping, people's emotional connect with elements, figure out what's wrong, to what level is it wrong, and how can we improve that, come up with options. Look at your EVP, look at your ways of working. If you don't have that, create those. With that cross-functional group, that's your starting point. But first, figure out what problem is. And that can be done by only a cross-functional group of people who are not HR. They have to be some people from HR, majority have to be from. So it's a marriage of voice of business and voice of field. You need to bring them both together. Across geographies, across countries, across office spaces, plans, or whatever it is.
Thank you all so very much. You were absolutely wonderful, whether you went first, second, third, last. Super, super happy to see just the level of engagement over chat. And we do still have 1 minute. So very, very short challenge. If you look at all the culture related conversations that you have been part of over the past couple of months, how do those make you feel looking forward? In one word, and what I will do popcorn style. So Sue, how do you feel about the conversations about culture that you've been a part of over the past few months? Within your organization, outside of your organization? One word.
Passionate.
Thank you. Jana.
Energetic.
Thank you. Anuj.
Curious.
Tracy.
Optimistic.
Thank you. Well, I can only hope that our audience feels energized and passionate and curious and inspired and all the other wonderful, wonderful fuel that you need to make meaningful culture work. I will welcome you again tomorrow to talk about culture as competitive advantage. But until then, enjoy everything and see you tomorrow. Thank you so very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Manola.
Manola.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.